What's up, guys? Coach Tony here with a couple of programming strategies to help you fit more heavy singles into your training so you can be more ready to attack heavy weights year round. Now, the sport of powerlifting is heavy singles, so we should be training accordingly. But what I find is that a lot of people spend too much time away from heavier singles during their training year. So when it comes time to prep for a meet, they kind of have to scramble to figure out what they can do for heavy singles and maybe not be peaked as effectively when it's time to compete. So I'm going to talk about how to move the singles around a training program to help you do more singles more often so you're more in practice for your sport as a power lifter. So I like the idea of splitting into 3 different phases of the year to incorporate singles, and phase 1 is going to be furthest away from a meet. Phase 2 is going to be a little bit closer to the meet, and then phase 3 is going to be right before the meet, kind of peaking, so to speak. And this is speaking in very, very general terms. Obviously, everybody's going to have to adjust this accordingly to their own needs, to their own experience levels, but I'm going to show you how to fit singles into your training more often. Now, a very trendy way to incorporate singles in powerlifting right now is to use what are called fatigue singles, where after you do your normal volume work, you then increase the weight by a little bit and do a couple of singles at heavier weights after you do your main volume work. And this might sound counterintuitive because it's like, why would I do the singles after the volume work? It's not going to be as productive. Well, I think the trick here is that by doing some volume work ahead of time, you're able to do heavy singles that feel relatively challenging without having the absolute weight on the bar be quite as heavy. So it might look something like this. Maybe you're doing like 4 sets of 5, 4 sets of 4, 5 sets of 3, something like this, where you're going to be using weights probably in like the 70 to 80% range of your 1RM. And then if you add 2.5%, 5%, 7.5%, let's just say 2.5 to 7.5% on top of the volume work that you've already done, that can get you into territory where you're going to be doing singles with appreciable weight. Let's say that you did 5 sets of 3 at 80% of your 1RM, and then you increase the weight by 7.5%. You're doing singles at 87.5% of your 1RM. That should be challenging. And the challenge is going to be increased because you've accumulated some fatigue from doing those volume sets ahead of time. So you're going to get kind of the feel of doing heavy singles at like 90% or above your 1RM, but the overall fatigue that you're going to feel from that might not be as pronounced because the weight on the bar simply isn't as heavy. So we found this to be a pretty effective way to incorporate singles further away from a competition. Then into the next phase, something that I've experimented with my lifters that I found to be pretty effective is doing a heavy top set, usually somewhere from like 2 to 5 reps, 7, 8, 9 RPE, nice heavy top set, and then doing a handful of singles at the same weight as your top set. So similar approach to the fatigue singles approach that I talked about at the beginning of the video, but because the heavy top set is going to be substantially heavier, you're going to be doing more weight overall for your singles most likely. So an example might be something like a top triple at 8 RPE. Something like that for most people is going to be somewhere in like the 86 to 88% range of 1RM. And then maybe you do 2 to 3 singles at that same weight. So that's also going to just increase the amount of volume at that given weight, but have it probably be snappier, better technique, better bar speed, because it's unlikely that you'd be able to repeat that top set weight for multiple sets of 3, but you can certainly do it for a triple and then handle it for 2 or 3 singles afterwards. So you can effectively double your volume at a given weight, but just be more productive and probably be less sloppy towards the end of those sets. And then in the final phase, this is pretty logical. Once you get closer to a meet, you're going to want to do your top sets as singles. So, work up to a top set of 1 at, somewhere between 7 to 9 RPE. So now we're getting into very heavy territory, weights that are going to be comparable to what you're going to do on the platform, and then followed by volume back down sets after that to continue to build your strength. You've heard me talk about powerlifting kind of being like studying for a test, and competing on the platform is your test. Doing heavy singles in training is like your quizzes, kind of a check-in to make sure that you're on the right track to get to your meet and be where you want to be at your meet. And then you got to do some studying after. You have to continue to build your strength via multiple sets of 3 to 5 reps. And typically we'll do those anywhere from like 85 to 95% of the weight used for your top singles. So further out from a meet, regular volume work followed by fatigue singles. A little bit closer to the meet, heavy top set with multiple singles at the same weight to increase the amount of volume you're doing at that heavy top weight. And then finally, nice and close to the meet, doing a top single to train specifically for your sport. So if you're looking to include more heavy singles throughout your training year, this 3-phase strategy is something that I think can be very effective.